Liz Lamping here, PHRA's Executive Director. Welcome to PHRA's podcast, P4, People, Purpose, Passion, Pittsburgh. P4 is brought to you by our members and sponsors, Lattus and the University of Pittsburgh, Executive MBA programs, and the Center for Executive Education. We appreciate their support, and we'll hear from them throughout the podcast, beginning with the University of Pittsburgh Executive MBA programs and Center for Executive Education. In Episode 5, Pete Schramm and Jessica Brooks-Woods, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Business Group on Health, encourage us all to acknowledge that we have the power to help those less fortunate, and it is time to invest in resources to make positive change.
Jessica, welcome to the P4 podcast today. We're excited to learn a lot more about your background and the million things that you've done in the past and the 5 million things that you're doing right now. So first question we always ask here is, who are you? How'd you get to where you are today? And tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This is very exciting. Who am I is a big question. Some refer to me as the Velvet Hammer in healthcare. I do a lot of work in ensuring that folks are accountable and doing what they should to ensure that we and our families have access to good quality health care. But first and foremost, Jessica Brooks-Woods. I'm a mom of 4 children, a wife, and from a career perspective, I'm the president and CEO of the Pittsburgh Business Group on Health, also the co-founder of EARN and EARN Staffing Solutions, which is a DEI and staffing firm, and also the founder of Health Desk, which is a health equity tool that we use in acute settings for patients when they feel like they need advocacy. So those are my day jobs. I sit on a lot of boards, a lot of organizations I serve on, including the Pennsylvania Insurance State Exchange, which is very, very exciting to ensure all Pennsylvanians have access to affordable health care, and many other organizations, MyTree, a medical cannabis company, and so some for-profit boards, some nonprofit boards, a lot of boards in the healthcare space as well. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about where you went to school, where you grew up, and some of those jobs that you had, kind of leading up to this, because you didn't just wake up one day and say, all right, now I'm the leader of 17 different organizations and on 37 different boards, right? There's something, come on, open up a little bit more of that story chapter right behind.
There's a journey for sure. So I'm from Western Pennsylvania, the Mon Valley. So I'm a Valley girl, I like to say. And Clairton, Elizabeth Ford and Clairton specifically, which really led me to my undergrad at Penn State University. We had an office within my high school, a Penn State office, which was strategically placed, kind of like ROTC and the Army was in some ways. But Penn State placed themselves there in Clairton, Pennsylvania, and gave me exposure to something I was interested in seeking. And my older sister actually was the first to go to college and get a degree in our family. She's 7 years older. She went to Penn State, a branch campus that obviously provided exposure for me. So that was my where I went. I went to State College, had a great time. So for those listening, I had to say that. Anyone who goes to Penn State knows that. And so I had a great time. I majored in business. I thought earlier on that I wanted to be a cardiologist or a neurologist when I was in middle school. And so healthcare was always of interest to me. However, through studying what it took and to get to that point, and also the speed to having financial independence, I chose business instead of medicine. And again, the office in my high school really guided me there. I knew that I wanted to dress up nice. wear nice suits, and travel internationally. Those are that's all I knew. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And I had a first cousin who went to Cornell, and she was in human resources. And so she introduced me to that career as something I should consider. Went to Small College of Business. I majored in management and with an HR concentration and international business, which afforded me the opportunity to study abroad in Costa Rica while I was an undergrad for a semester. I was there and lived there and really immersed myself in that, which had me seek out organizations that I could potentially do more of that with. And I wanted to ensure after college that I was able to work with a global company to create that pathway to international business. In between that, I was an intern for Highmark, Blue Cross Blue Shield in Pittsburgh through the En-ROADS program, which assured that minority students had opportunities to have internships within corporate America. And the goal of En-ROADS was to also ensure that you had a job opportunity and offer by the time you graduated. So I was able to actually have 3 years of interning at a health insurance company, which made me attractive in addition to my grades to Lockheed Martin, which ended up being my first employer. We share that in common, and was able to join Lockheed Martin, their Human Resource Leadership Development Program, which I was only one of 15 people a year selected into that program. So I feel very privileged and honored and lucky in a sense, very blessed to have had that opportunity. And that was my entrance into a global company, and had a great opportunity there to work with a lot of other LDPs. So I was in HR and I was able to hire and help recruit engineers and technical folks and operational leadership development folks, and a lot of young people out of different colleges and universities, and did some really interesting work in Syracuse, New York with Lockheed Martin, and in Morristown, New Jersey with Lockheed Martin in the MS2 division. Healthcare was always important to me, like I mentioned before, and we were changing presidents at the time. So the Bush administration was going out, and we weren't sure it was be Obama. We kind of thought maybe Hillary at that time. So, but either way, it was very clear that likely there would be a Democratic shift in government, and that made sense for me to go into healthcare versus defense, and kind of get back home from New Jersey back to Pittsburgh. And that's when I reached out to my former employer where I interned, Highmark, and came back in HR at Highmark. What was interesting at that time, because healthcare was changing so rapidly, I didn't have a traditional bureaucratic career, which is what I ran away from Pittsburgh. That's why I ran away from Pittsburgh. I didn't want to be pigeonholed or stuck. And but because healthcare was so dynamic, the industry was going into from business to business to consumer. I was able to be on mergers or acquisition teams from a diversity staffing acquisition perspective and a diversity and inclusion perspective in HR. So that was awesome. And then when the Affordable Care Act was right on our heels, there were other special teams for change management and ACA, I guess you would say ambassadors, that I was able to participate in, which gave me access to providers, to some of the technical things that would need to take place to prepare for the ACA. And at that time, I also decided to go to grad school, which opened up a whole world of opportunity of what do you do after grad school? You make this major investment. I went to Carnegie Mellon University. It was a major investment and wanted to make sure that I got a return out of that. And I felt that it was an opportunity to move forward in my career at that point once I graduated, which is how I ended up leading the Pittsburgh Business Group on health. I'll take a breath.
What was the degree at Carnegie Mellon?
Master's in Public Management, and that was at the Hines College. At the Hines College,
CMU. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so throughout this journey, you mentioned 4 kids. So there's some family going on. At which point did you say, okay, I'm going to, kind of turn on this outside of work piece? Where did that sort of enter into the picture?
Well, that's a great question. Actually, while I was a single mom while I was at Lockheed Martin my last year there, and I literally had this pivotal point where I had to choose between gas in my car or feeding my baby. And that was it was a breaking point for me because I ran out of gas on the side of the road. And roadside assistance had to come get me, and I was late picking up my baby from daycare because I ran out of gas. And this whole thing that I can do this, I could do it. My family, everyone was here in Pittsburgh. It opened my eyes to say it's okay to need help. And honestly, I did not want to move back to Pittsburgh if I wasn't married. I felt like I would be single forever. That was one of the reasons why I was holding on to dear life, like, no. But my mentor, while I was at Highmark, she checked on me, like I would say probably every 6 months religiously, just to say, are you ready to come back? And every time I would say, no, I'm having a good time. I'm learning, not ready to come back. And a part of me felt like coming back was failing and that I would be not really meeting what I set out to do. And when that moment happened on the side of the road, I realized that coming back was necessary and that needing help and having a support system was strength. And so that really just changed everything and how I ended up back in healthcare. And then once I was here, I actually didn't end up alone. 3 years later, I met my husband, Marlon Woods, and at a gala, and we were married within a year of meeting. He told me on our first date, which was the next day, May 2nd, 2010, that he knew I was his wife. And the next May we were married. And the May after that, we had our first child together, Jace. And then after that, it's been ongoing. And we really didn't make a decision to hold off on building our family and me going to grad school. At the time we met, I was actually just applying for grad school. Wasn't sure yet if I would be accepted to CMU, but I ended up being accepted. We got married, planned our wedding during that time. And then also, and by the next semester or next year, we were having our first child. When I graduated from CMU 3 years later, we were on our way to having our second child, our third, number 3. And then the final 4, MJ, came in 2017. So my career has been building, my education has been, developing, all while my family has been growing, and really hadn't pressed the pause button, just kept moving in both parts. I get asked the question all the time, like, how is that even possible? Even while I was at CMU, someone asked me how it was possible I didn't have a nanny. I just had Jesse at the time, and Jace, and really I have a good partner. I have an awesome husband and we work together in this, and we ensure that we support one another, and we do what we have to do, including picking me up from work and me nursing the baby in between classes at CMU. Like whatever it takes, we've done it to ensure that we've been able to grow.
And so I need to brag about Jessica a little bit more because it's remarkable how she says that she has a great partner, and then Marlon also says that he has a great partner. So it's this kind of cycle of goodness and just great people coming together. And that's where you and I actually got introduced whenever Marlon was interviewing me on a similar podcast like this. And he said, Pete, just wait until you meet my rock star wife, better half of this puzzle piece. So congratulations on everything that you've accomplished, Jessica. You said that you wanted to dress up, travel internationally, and it seems like you were successful down in Costa Rica, turned up the success at this gala on May 1st of 2010. And then wasn't there a third thing that you wanted to accomplish in life?
Negotiate and wear business suits.
That's what it was.
Yes. I wanted to ensure that I had the opportunity to look sharp and do good.
To look sharp and do good. It's almost like you're trying to do what's right, respect others, and perform with excellence, right? That's important, because that's what the mission was at Lockheed Martin, where both Jessica and I worked previously. So Jessica, we talk about all these different experiences, a bunch of different hats that you have worn and continue to wear personally and professionally, and you're around HR more than the average person, I'd say. Talk to us about the biggest trend that you're seeing. What's impacting everybody in HR and organizations across the country?
That's a great question. When we talk about heroes, healthcare heroes, I believe I work with the most unrecognized heroes, which are HR professionals and more specifically benefits leaders in the HR profession. During this significant, 2 to 3 years that we've been in with the pandemic, social unrest, the fact that we're facing mental health challenges like never before, the folks that I work with every day are in the epicenter of that, strategizing, working hard to take care of the people that rely on them, as well as the companies that employ them and that they're all striving to ensure is successful. And so when I think about what all employers or HR leaders are faced with, people, the fact that they are having to face people challenges in a more customizable way than ever before, that no longer can we cohort our populations, that we have to realize that we have unique circumstances and differences that are all housed potentially under, one EIN number, one tax ID called an organization. And the fact that we're in an environment for the first time that's more virtual than ever before, regardless of industry, and that the people we take care of are beyond those that have access to badge into our four walls, that also includes their families. Equity is probably the top priority issue within the DEI space within HR function. That is not only an HR issue, it's now at the board level, stakeholders, shareholder level, of course the CEO level, and definitely in HR, from across diversity, equity, inclusion practitioners to talent acquisition practitioners to OD and those driving culture and change to HR benefits. And for the first time, these functions within HR have this commonality or common challenge that they're trying to solve for. And I think that's the most significant opportunity for every single organization and every HR leader to understand that they haven't been trained in. That's the reality of diversity, inclusion, belonging in many ways, but not equity in the sense of that we're talking about comprehensively beyond pay. Actual, how are people doing and how are we ensuring that we're not doing them harm? And that's a really, really big responsibility that's facing HR professionals today.
Jessica, if we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you honed in on the equity piece right there. What's kind of your definition of equity, or how would you kind of break those up? I'm with you that there's a huge need to not only emphasize this, but to educate everybody on what everything is. So from your perspective, if you were to break it down a little bit, how would you help everybody listening understand Jessica's opinion here?
What I often say is, where we have disparate outcomes, we need a disparate level of effort to address those issues. And that's where inequity comes in. In order to create equity, there are certain individuals within our organizations that have, for a variety of reasons, not been able to fare as well. And equity to me means acknowledging that and understanding that we have the power to impact that, and then putting in the resources, time, and commitment to address those things. When I talk about health equity, oftentimes I'm talking about race. And there's a variety of other intersections that impact health equity. But I do believe, just because of historical design of our medical system, where health was ultimately practiced on, experimented on, was based on race and socioeconomic status in this country. And so I talk about health equity and race equity was when your race does not determine how you fare in your health status, where that does not determine whether or not you have the ability to achieve a health status of great standing or not. And so when I talk about health equity, you have to have, you take your blinders off and actually see the issues and see people, and then be able to account for that in your policies, practices, and procedures.
Okay. I learn a little bit more. Actually, I learn a lot a bit more every time that we talk. So thanks for shedding some light on that. Digging deeper, you talked about the Carnegie Mellon, background. Whenever we think about Carnegie Mellon, there's always that kind of computer science piece of it, software development piece, artificial intelligence piece. Have you ever seen anything where we have the flavor of AI and equity kind of coming together? Is that sort of coming into the HR realm today?
It is. It is in a variety of different ways. There's some a lot of new innovators actually are really more focused and laser focused on how do they achieve outcomes and understand equity and the impact to that. I would say that anything that's attempted that prior to more recent years would likely didn't have the team members that were diverse, inclusive enough to consider who they ultimately wanted to impact or how it would adversely impact those using the tools. So today we have a lot of different designers from health systems to health plans to startup companies really looking at what they've developed and are developing and ensuring that they have a more equitable lens, whether that means ensuring they have more diverse teams at the table, that they're recruiting that, they have more diverse focus groups or customers that they're looking at, they're expanding their reach in ways to account for what AI probably wasn't initially designed to do, which was ensure everyone would be able to be whole after using whatever the tool was. So I'm personally working on a project, Health Desk, and we talked about that prior to this podcast, that actually is the future state is designed to partner the stories of those who are most disenfranchised in the healthcare delivery system with AI by incorporating their voices real time and evolving solution sets where employee or patients can be helped in acute settings by being heard. And the idea is that we can't expect all bias to be eliminated. That's not reality. And so, and everyone's not going to turn into a robot, and we need humans. So how do you account for bias? How do you account for that and the outcomes we want to achieve and the things that we do out of our conscious control to impact that? And I believe AI has a really, really significant opportunity there. I've seen solutions in the mental health space with AI and equity aligning. A lot of new tech startups are really incorporating a DEI lens from recruitment and how you hire folks to how you develop them or match them in many cases with opportunities within your organization and ensuring that the voices of their populations are included in that. I'm seeing a lot of different things in the marketplace from an HR perspective and healthcare perspective, which is my primary lane. And then from a staffing perspective and culture perspective, there's some really, really cool, I guess we'll see in the coming years, tools and resources and companies that are really developing and hanging their flag on equity because they understand that the world is global and they want to be able to have more of the market share. It's smart. It's smart business to be able to ensure that you have diversity and perspectives and experiences at the table.
At the HR Academy that the PHRA put on recently, they talked about a diverse workforce is going to be 40% more profitable, right? So whenever we can truly open up, these opportunities and bring other people to the table, we're going to, do better as an organization, more productive, more profitable, a better culture overall. So everything that you're saying not only is the right thing to do, but it also helps businesses win. And I think that's kind of the messaging that's going to be really valuable to the leaders of organizations. Whenever you tie it back to, yes, social impact is one piece, but also the ROI, right? And so it's 100%. Hitting them on the hard side and the soft side. Now, Jessica, as we get into this, DEI can be a fragile, place to navigate, right? People come from different backgrounds again, right? And that can be tricky in some capacities. I've heard you talk before about trust and respect. What do you do? What are some best practices whenever you're initially getting into a conversation with somebody, whether it's DEI related or not, how do we build trust? How do we build respect? Where's that, kind of tips and tricks for that strong foundation so that we can then start to build and grow together?
Well, being consistent is key. And for me as a leader and leading my own organization and organizations, but my team members, is them seeing me being consistent and vulnerable. I've had to be very vulnerable during this time as a leader and in the pandemic, and admit at times that I'm overwhelmed with my kids home from school, and also being an organization that needed to remain not only relevant but essential during the pandemic. And I have a diverse team. I have African American team members, male and female. I have a Jewish team member. I have a Muslim medical director. I have, from religion perspective, age. I think I'm the youngest on my team. Everyone who I lead is older than me, and whether they're a direct employee or a consultant. And so I've had to be vulnerable with them and also show them where I have had uncertainty. Also, listening is critical. During the pandemic, we educate so much around mental health, and we read on it, we're educating about it, and I had to look introspectively and say, am I really paying attention to the mental health of my own team and staff? So immediately pivoted and created mental health days, which meant, and that really came from a request. The employee said, I really am overwhelmed. It was like right when the pandemic was at its height and George Floyd murder happened. And I had someone say, I'm overwhelmed and I need some time off. And that triggered me to say, well, that person was brave enough to tell me, but they probably aren't the only one, and implemented mental health days. Last year, the last quarter, every Friday was off for the quarter, because I recognized how hard we were doing serving others. We're a service organization, so all we do is move and serve, and I had to consider my team. So one, being sensitive and discerning, and seeing people for who they are and for what's important to them is critical, and that's allowed me to be able to really build trust. I would say we have a high trusting team, not only with me and my team members, but also collectively as an organization, that we can lean on one another and be consistent and be reliable. And also, I've been very honest with my story telling over the past few years and sharing my why. And I think that resonates with people. The ability to see someone who's willing to some would say risk it all or put them on the line, but for me, I don't have a choice. Like, I don't see it as a risk. I see it as my responsibility. But others see it as a risk. And when people are able to see that you're willing to risk, whether it's comfortability or reputation or, whatever it may be, that's a value for a greater good, people can trust you. And as a result, I've been able to gather and gain trust of not only my team members, but multiple stakeholders in the region and throughout the country. And I don't take that for granted. And that's the other part about it. I really value the fact that I am trusted, and I honor that.
Let me just kind of correct you right there. You said multiple stakeholders around the region and country. I'd say many, many, many stakeholders around the globe. And it's, again, pretty phenomenal, Jessica. But you talk there, right, about vulnerability. And you mentioned early in our conversation, whenever the car stopped, and you said, hey, I've been uptight, and maybe I do need to let my guard down a little bit and let people know what's going on. And they got to see more of the real Jessica. And so it seems like this recurring theme of being real and being genuine kind of helps with the path to success, and people want to work with you. And I don't think it's possible to be part of multiple organizations, let alone lead multiple organizations, without having that trust and respect. And some of this you can learn out of a book, and you went to school a couple of times, but most of it you can't. So where'd you develop some of this EQ, IQ along the way of interacting with people? And, as people are listening, beginning, early, end of their career, middle of their career, how can we put some more tools in our toolbox around the people engagement process and building up the EQ and the IQ along the way?
Oh, wow. What a great question. You're making me like go inside deep down. Well, obviously, not obviously, but I do come from a very strong faith-based family. My dad was an evangelist. We're a family. They had 5 children and didn't have a lot of means, but we never really recognized that because it was such a loving home and loving family. And we were all in it together. So this idea of like leave no man behind, that was how we rolled, right? And to the point where my sister went to Penn State. She was the first. I was the second. My younger sister and I were roommates there, and my younger brother went, and now my sister graduated 2 kids from there. So this leave no man behind, woman behind mantra is very important to me and a part of my core values. I also recognized a lot of, I learned from everyone. I learned from peers. I learned from those who I reported to. In some cases, I had great leaders, and others I didn't. And no one was actually perfect. So both of them had both pros and cons within their leadership style, and I gleaned from that. And most of my experiences up until recently were new. I hadn't led an organization before I led an organization. I hadn't led this, the amount of team members and the complexity of budgets and growth and diversification before I had that accountability and responsibility. And I had to glean from others and be willing to know that I didn't know everything, but I truly, my faith told me that God would send me the resources, the people that I needed. And I trusted that. And that's what's happened. And it's allowed me to be able to also elevate folks and who would have maybe at times been walked past or ignored or just not really fully tapped into or optimized. And I've wanted to be optimized throughout my life and my career. I wanted to be valued. Earlier on in my life, I didn't always feel like that in my educational system and a variety of different areas and throughout my life. And so I valued that and seeing people and helping them really see themselves. And that's been a big part of, I believe, how I've learned how to navigate, how to lead, how to value others. And it's paid off. It's paying off because it's bigger than me, and I understand that. I understand that my roles that I have, that I've been afforded, and I'm honored to have, aren't just, it's a gift. It's a gift that I have to be able to serve others in the way that I do, and it's purposeful, and that matters. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
you talked a lot around the EQ piece of it, and that's super helpful because that's something that is almost innate, right? And something that we develop over time, but it comes with a certain space and with a certain skill set and with a certain background. So yeah, you did help. Tell us about another individual. Right? Is there somebody else who you're like, wow, whenever it comes to EQ and really understanding that emotional intelligence that has maybe influenced your life, who would you sort of highlight? And what are some of the kind of ways that they wield their skills around EQ?
That's a really good question. I have a personal example, which was my father. He was an evangelist, he's here, but he doesn't do it anymore. But he was an evangelist, and I would see him, prepare. We would go, I have early memories with him, like in the dark on his floor, preparing for a Sunday, while I'm trying to like sneak in his drawer and grab some socks and steal his socks or something. And it was the time that he took and the care that he had to ensure that he was fully prepared for others, and to be sensitive to the message that he was to share. And then how there were lines of people. He would like pour his heart out, pour his soul out, and there would be lines of people just wanting time with him and wanting more, wanting, whether it was prayer or to share a testimony, and how he was able to really just respond to so many different personalities, issues with grace. And I think that being able to witness that Sunday after Sunday, or traveling from one state or country to the next, really shaped my ability to respond and communicate, and to see people, and to have a broader perspective on that. And also, honestly, being a Black woman, growing up, being told that you have to perform strong, twice as hard. You have to work harder to get hopefully recognized. And that training was in our family, but it was also in my internships and through the organizations that I connected with, or mentors that kind of found their way to say, hey, this is what you have to do to be able to navigate and be respected or be seen in the room. And so there was this like kind of informal, formal training that said, if you're not emotionally intelligent, if you can't really manage in this dynamic, you might not succeed. You might not be able to really be able to take care of your family. So part of that wasn't a choice, and it was a resilience built up from those experiences that ultimately has afforded the ability to in this question, have an EQ that is able to create great success and impact. And then there's a woman here in Pittsburgh that I witnessed, Karen Feinstein. She's the president and CEO of the Jewish Healthcare Foundation and the Pittsburgh Regional Health Initiative. And she's just the rooms, well, one, she's a trailblazer. And during a time where she took quality and worked to ensure that quality was incorporated, just like green belts. You're familiar with green belts and black belts and from Lockheed Martin days. Taking that methodology and incorporating that in healthcare, before it was even popular to talk about quality in the way we're talking about, and holding health systems accountable. And the rooms that she's been in, the relationships she's been able to maintain, the continuous innovation that she creates year over year. I sit on one of her boards, so I get to witness it really closely. It's quite impressive. And it's someone that I'm really, really in awe of. And her ability to surround herself with folks from all different generations. And oftentimes she's the oldest person in the room, the oldest person on her team, but she's able to connect regardless of what position you come from or what your age is or your background, in a way that I think is pretty impressive. So that's one person I would definitely point to, that if you're in the Pittsburgh area, I would say look her up, send her a note, maybe try to have tea or coffee with her. You'll get a lot from that conversation.
Jessica, I love how you talked about, mentorship in a couple of different capacities, throughout our conversation today. So it's cool to hear that you've had multiple different influencers in your life, some more active professionally, some personally. But it's cool how you can say, hey, I've been successful, but I didn't do it alone. Right? There's these great people repeatedly that you've talked about in your stories where they've been part of this journey. And it all started off with the foundation of faith, and moving around the country, throughout healthcare to defense, internationally, back into the healthcare scene, and in kind of optimizing the power of people and opening up those different opportunities for people. It's almost like you should be writing a book or something about some of these stories. So I'll let you tell us a little bit more about that shortly. I want to dig into some rapid fire questions and hear a little bit more about Jessica. Doesn't give you a whole lot of time to think through these things. But Jessica, is there a book that you're reading right now?
I am reading a book. It's called Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. and it takes you from just where medical system care has been created from before colonialism till modern day. So it's a long, very researched book that has taken me quite some time to get through. I think I'm on page 200 and maybe have 200 more to go, but it's I'm learning a lot and connecting a lot of dots from reading that book.
Yeah. Is there another read that you would recommend to anybody else that's listening here? One of your faves?
Oh my gosh, one of my faves. Is it called? I think it's For You. I don't know the exact title. I do have it next to my bed, but it's a really good book because it talks to you about like your why and who you're for. And those are two different things. Like what your why is versus like how do you identify who your who is, so that you can really meet your full potential and your full purpose in life. And I will be happy to send you the title of that book so that you can like maybe put it in the chat, but is now on the top of my mind.
Okay, sounds good. You talked a little bit about equity before. Where can we go and get some more information, latest and greatest news, tips, best practices around topics around that?
Well, definitely the Pittsburgh Business Group One Health website. So www.pbghpa.org. There's also many organizations that there's a new Race and Health Foundation that just launched. Dr. Sanjay Prasad started that foundation. PHRA, which is a federal agency that's doing a lot of research in the space. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is doing a lot of work in that space as well with a lot of new resources. And then there's some really cool tech startups like Health in Her Hue and Earth and Radical Health. Those are all like cool tech startups launched by women of color that are doing phenomenal work in this space. And some mental health apps too that ensure that you have inclusivity in the resources that you're deploying to your workforce. So I would definitely encourage especially employers, HR leaders that are listening to this podcast to consider and look at these new innovative resources that have been developed to ensure that not one of your population, your employees or their families are left behind in the solutions that you're trying to bring to the marketplace.
All right, last two. It's around time management and habits and routines. So any tips and tricks around time management, other than what did Hermione have in the Harry Potter movie, like a necklace that she turned to go back in time? I don't know if you have one of those, but if you do, where can we buy it? So time management and habits and routines. Talk us through a little bit of those.
Well, I'm heading to the gym right after this. So That is very important. I definitely make sure that I see my trainer at least twice a week. So it's like really pushed hard, and I get to there and independently to the gym at least 2 to 3 additional times a week. So that's important to make sure that's prioritized in my day, mostly when the kids are at school. So I can make sure there's no other reasons why I can't get there. I definitely I make time. I do make, as we've spoke, I date my husband. We make sure that we have a good time. We mix a lot of business and pleasure, honestly. So be open to that, because sometimes at different points of your career and life, you can't always have this optimal goal of true work-life balance. We merge our work life a lot, and it works for us. And we have fun doing our work. And so I would encourage that. If you have to talk at a conference or business trip, take your spouse with you, or take your kids and have them be a part of those experiences with you. And, sometimes you do sacrifice sleep. Being in healthcare, that's not the right part of advice, but I personally do sacrifice sleep when it's necessary. And so I might have early mornings or late nights at times to make sure I get it all done. And more than all of that is surround yourself with team members, consultants, vendors, and partners that you enjoy working with, that are aligned with your values, that are actually rowing in the same direction. so that you can get there faster, one, but you can really be safe and enjoy it at the same time.
I love it. What's the quote? If you want to get there fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together.
That's right.
It seems like you've gone pretty far in a short amount of time. So congratulations again, Jessica, and thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to watching you as you continue to grow and positively influence many, many lives around the region, the country, and the world.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
In a world where businesses are coming to terms with the demands of employee choice, solutions to improve workplace culture are crucial. Businesses of all sizes are doing everything they can to attract and retain top talent during this unprecedented time. Connection to the team, a sense of belonging, and a feeling of purpose rank high in the needs of today's work-from-anywhere society. Sound familiar? At Lattus, we understand the importance team building and positive employee-employer relationships have on the success of a workplace. Done well, top-down and peer-to-peer knowledge sharing can unlock new levels of productivity and profitability to create a culture of cohesive collaboration. Ongoing high-quality connections reduce burnout and mitigate mental health issues, more important now than ever with social isolation on the rise. Lattus is a tool to make internal employee engagement easier and much more impactful for the entire organization. Lattus is a proven, secure workplace solution that is easy to implement for organizations of all sizes. So what are you waiting for? Let's Lattus.
The PHRA P4 podcast was created to help build HR leaders through discussions with thought and business leaders on the most critical success factor of any business, its people. If you enjoy an episode, please help us spread the word by subscribing to the podcast and providing us a rating. We would love for you to take a screenshot of the episode, tag PHRA, and share it with your followers. Until next time, thank you for watching and thank you for listening.